She sheltered a bleeding man during a storm, unaware the billionaire would heal her heart too. She found him bleeding on her porch at 9:47 p.m., and by midnight, the storm had trapped them together in ways that would change everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to the moment Laurel Baptiste's quiet mountain life shattered, the moment she opened her cabin door and found a man who would either save her or destroy her. She just didn't know which yet. Before we dive into this incredible true story of how a billionaire and a broken-hearted woman found each other in the worst storm Asheville had seen in decades, do me a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe because this story gets absolutely insane. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now, back to that porch. Back to the blood. Back to the beginning. The rain came down like God himself was trying to wash the mountains clean. Laurel stood at her cabin window, coffee going cold in her hands, watching the storm turn her little piece of North Carolina into something that belonged in a nightmare. Trees bent sideways. The power had cut out an hour ago. Her generator hummed in the background, giving her just enough light to see the chaos outside. This was exactly why she'd moved here. The isolation. The quiet. The fact that the nearest neighbor was 3 miles down a road that barely qualified as a road even on good days. After everything that happened in Charlotte, losing her ma to cancer, watching her marriage dissolve like sugar in hot water, realizing the life she'd built was just pretty lies held together with hope and denial, she needed space. She got space, all right. 37 acres of it, along with a cabin that leaked when it rained hard, a mountain that wanted to kill her every winter, and a solitude so complete it sometimes felt like drowning. The bang on her door nearly stopped her heart. Not a knock. A bang. Like something heavy had hit the wood. Laurel set down her coffee, grabbed the baseball bat she kept by the door, because living alone in the mountains meant being prepared, and crept forward. Through the small window, she couldn't see anything but darkness and rain. Another bang. Weaker this time. Hello. Her voice sounded small even to her own ears. Nothing. She unlocked the door, bat raised, ready for. The man collapsed inward the second she opened it, hitting her floor with a thud that shook the whole cabin. And that's when she saw the blood. So much blood it looked black in the dim generator light. It soaked through his clothes, pooled beneath him, mixed with the rainwater streaming off his body. Oh my God. Laurel dropped to her knees beside him, nurse training kicking in before fear could stop her. Hey, can you hear me? He groaned. Tried to push himself up. Failed. She rolled him over as gently as she could, and that's when she got her first real look at him. White guy, maybe late 30s, with dark hair plastered to his skull and a face that probably looked good when it wasn't covered in blood and mud. Expensive suit, or what was left of one. The kind that cost more than her truck. What happened? She was already checking his pulse. Strong enough. Breathing okay. Head wound bleeding but not arterial. Something wrong with his side though. The way he kept his arm pressed there, protective. Car. His eyes opened. Blue. Shockingly blue. Went off the road. Mile back. Maybe more. Walked. Crawled. Saw your lights. You crawled a mile up a mountain in this storm? Seemed like a better option than dying in a ditch. He tried to smile. Managed something closer to a grimace. I'm Rhodes. And I'm really sorry about your floor. Despite everything, the blood, the storm, the absolute insanity, Laurel almost laughed. I'm Laurel. And we'll worry about my floor after I make sure you're not bleeding out. She grabbed her phone. No signal. Of course not. The storm had probably taken out the cell tower. I need to see where you're hurt. Can you sit up? With her help, he managed it. Barely. She peeled back his destroyed jacket and shirt, and her stomach dropped. A gash along his ribs, deep enough to need stitches. Cuts on his arms and hands from what looked like broken glass. The head wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. I used to be a nurse, she said, already moving toward her bathroom where she kept her first aid supplies. Before I moved up here. So you're lucky, I guess. Lucky you crashed near the one person within 10 miles who knows how to keep you alive. Luck. Rhodes leaned back against her couch, eyes closing. Haven't had much of that lately. Something in his voice made her pause. It wasn't just pain. It was something deeper. Something that sounded like the same hollowness she heard in her own voice these days. She came back with supplies, knelt beside him again. This is going to hurt. Everything hurts. But he didn't flinch when she started cleaning the wounds. Just watched her with those blue eyes that were way too alert for someone who'd just crawled up a mountain. You live here alone? Is that relevant to your medical treatment? Just making conversation. Trying not to pass out. Then talk about literally anything else. Laurel pressed gauze to the gash on his ribs. He hissed but didn't pull away. Where were you going? In this storm. Away. One word. Final. The kind of answer that said the conversation was over. She got it. She'd given that same answer enough times when people asked why she'd left Charlotte, left her career, left everything to hide in the mountains. They worked in silence for a while. Her cleaning and bandaging. Him sitting perfectly still, jaw tight, hands clenched. The storm raged outside. The generator hummed. And slowly, she pieced him back together. You're good at this, he said finally. I had a lot of practice. She finished wrapping his ribs, sat back. My ma was sick for 2 years before she died. I took care of her. Every day. Every night. Until. She stopped. Why was she telling this to a stranger bleeding on her floor? But Rhodes just nodded. I'm sorry. 2 words. Simple. But he said them like he meant them. Like he knew what loss tasted like. The head wound needs stitches, Laurel said, changing the subject. I can do it, but it's going to scar. I don't care about scars. Then this is going to hurt like hell. Everything hurts, he repeated. But this time, she thought he might not be talking about his injuries. The stitches took 43 minutes. Laurel worked by the light of 3 battery-powered lanterns, her hands steady even though her heart was doing something complicated in her chest. Rhodes sat perfectly still on her couch, jaw clenched, knuckles white where he gripped the armrest. He didn't make a sound. Not when she cleaned the wound with alcohol that had to burn like hellfire. Not when the needle pierced skin. Not even when she pulled the thread through to close the gash that ran from his hairline to his temple. You can scream if you want, she said halfway through. Nobody's going to hear you out here anyway. I don't scream anymore. He said it like a fact. Like something he'd decided a long time ago. She tied off the last stitch, cut the thread, sat back. Well, you're not going to die tonight. Congratulations. That's the goal. He opened his eyes, looked at her. Really looked. Thank you. For not letting me bleed out on your porch. I thought about it. She started cleaning up the bloody gauze, the used supplies. Seemed like too much paperwork. This time, his smile reached his eyes. Barely. Practical. Outside, the storm showed no signs of stopping. If anything, it was getting worse. Wind screamed through the trees. Rain hammered the roof like it had a personal grudge. Thunder rolled through so close she felt it in her bones. You should rest, Laurel said. That couch folds out. I'll get you blankets. I should check on my car. Your car is at the bottom of a mountain in the middle of a storm. It'll still be wrecked in the morning. She headed toward her bedroom. Stay put. Don't bleed on anything else. When she came back with blankets and a pillow, Rhodes was standing at her window, staring out into the darkness. He'd taken off what was left of his shirt. In the lantern light, she could see the full extent of the damage. The wrapped ribs. The bandaged arms. The way he held himself like someone who'd learned not to show weakness. He was also, she couldn't help but notice, built like someone who spent time in a gym. Broad shoulders. Defined back. The kind of body that didn't come from sitting behind a desk all day. What do you do? The question came out before she could stop it. For work, I mean. He turned, caught her looking, didn't comment on it. I run a company. Technology, software development, AI integration, that kind of thing. In Asheville. San Francisco. Was San Francisco. I sold most of it a few years ago. Now He stopped. I don't know what I do anymore. There was a story there. A big one. But Laurel knew better than to push. She'd spent the last 2 years avoiding her own story. The least she could do was respect his. She handed him the blankets. The storm's not stopping anytime soon. Roads are probably gone. Cell towers definitely out. You're stuck here until morning at least. Maybe longer. I'm sorry to impose. You already bled all over my floor. Might as well sleep on my couch too. She turned toward her bedroom, paused. Rhodes? That's not your real name, is it? He smiled. Actually smiled. Does it matter? Not really. Just figured a guy wearing a suit that expensive, running from something, giving one-word answers. You're either in trouble or you're someone important trying not to be. Maybe both. Great. I rescued a celebrity fugitive. But she was smiling too, just a little. Don't steal anything. And if you die in your sleep, I'm leaving your body on the porch. I'm not explaining a dead rich guy to the sheriff. Deal. She went to her room, closed the door, and immediately pulled out her phone. Still no signal. She tried the landline, dead. The storm had cut them off completely. Which meant she was alone in a cabin with a stranger who might be running from the law, might be famous, might be dangerous. A stranger who looked at her like he knew exactly what loneliness tasted like. A stranger with blue eyes that made her think about things she'd sworn off when her ex-husband packed his bags and chose his comfort over her grief. This was a terrible idea. All of it. But when she finally lay down, listening to the storm rage and the generator hum and the too quiet sounds of another person in her space for the first time in months, she didn't feel afraid. She felt something else entirely. Something that scared her more than any storm. She woke up to silence. The storm had stopped. The generator had stopped. Everything had stopped except the sound of someone moving around her cabin. Laurel grabbed her baseball bat, again, and crept out of her bedroom. Rhodes stood in her kitchen, illuminated by the gray dawn light filtering through the windows. He'd found her coffee, her mugs, her French press. He'd figured out her camping stove. And he was making breakfast. You're cooking. He turned, spatula in hand, looking completely at ease despite the bandages and the borrowed sweatpants she'd left outside her door last night. You saved my life. Seemed like the least I could do. Hope you like eggs. She lowered the bat. I didn't leave eggs. I found them. Also bread. Butter. Some cheese that might be past its prime but smells okay. He gestured to her table. Sit. Let me do this. It had been so long since someone made her breakfast. So long since another person occupied her space. So long since she felt anything except the hollow ache of loss and the sharp edge of loneliness. She sat. He cooked. And when he set a plate in front of her, perfectly scrambled eggs, toast with butter, even coffee made exactly right, she had to look away before he saw the tears. Laurel. His voice was soft. You okay? Fine. She wiped her eyes quickly. Just. Nobody's made me breakfast in a long time. He sat down across from her with his own plate. The morning light caught his face, and for the first time, she saw him clearly. The strong jaw. The lines around his eyes that said he smiled more than he frowned, or used to. The way he moved with careful precision, like someone who was used to being in control but had recently learned he wasn't. I looked outside, Rhodes said. Your driveway's completely washed out. Trees down everywhere. My car. He shook his head. It's totaled. Barely even looks like a car anymore. So you're stuck here. Looks like it. At least until the road's clear. Could be days. Days. Alone together in this cabin. Two strangers with too many secrets and not enough reasons to trust each other. Laurel picked up her fork. Then you better make yourself useful. These eggs are good, but if you're staying, you're helping with repairs. This cabin doesn't maintain itself. Rhodes smiled. Actually smiled. The kind that reached his eyes and made him look younger. Made him look like someone who remembered how to be happy. Deal. 3 days. That's how long it took before the first real crack appeared in their carefully constructed walls. Rhodes turned out to be handy. Like, unervingly handy for a guy who'd claimed to run a tech company. He fixed the leak in her roof using supplies she didn't even know she had. Repaired the generator when it sputtered and died on day 2. Even managed to jerry-rig a temporary antenna that got her phone one flickering bar of service for about 10 minutes before the whole thing died again. Where'd you learn all this? Laurel asked, watching him work on the porch railing he'd insisted was a safety hazard. He wasn't wrong. The thing had been trying to kill her since she moved in. My dad. Rhodes didn't look up from the wood he was sanding. He was a carpenter before used to drag me to job sites when I was a kid. I hated it then. Wanted to be inside playing video games, not learning about load-bearing beams and proper wood treatment. But you remembered. Muscle memory. Funny how that works. He finally glanced at her. What about you? How does a nurse end up in a falling-apart cabin in the middle of nowhere? There it was. The question she'd been avoiding since he showed up bleeding on her porch. Laurel leaned against the porch post, coffee cup warm in her hands. The October air had that crisp quality that made everything feel sharper, clearer. 3 weeks since that storm. 3 weeks since she'd been alone. 3 weeks of learning how to exist in the same space as another human being again. My ma got sick, she said finally. Breast cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. I took a leave from the hospital to take care of her. That leave turned into me quitting. Turned into 2 years of watching her die slowly. Turned into. She stopped. Swallowed hard. My ex-husband, Jonathan, he wanted me to put her in a facility. Said it was too much. Too expensive. Too hard on me. Maybe he was right about that last part. But she was my ma. She raised me alone after my daddy left when I was 6. She worked 3 jobs to keep me fed and clothed and safe. There was no universe where I was putting her in some facility to die surrounded by strangers. Rhodes had stopped working. Was just listening now. Really listening. Jonathan left 6 months before she died. Said he couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't watch me disappear into grief. Couldn't handle living in a house that smelled like medicine and death. Laurel laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. He took half of everything in the divorce. Which was fine, except half of nothing is still nothing. By the time Ma died, I had about $3,000 to my name, and a nursing degree I couldn't look at without feeling sick. So you came here. Bought this place with what was left of her life insurance. 37 acres of isolation and a cabin that's trying to kill me. Paradise. She took a long drink of coffee. What about you? What are you running from? He looked at her for a long moment. Then he set down the sandpaper, sat on the porch steps, and said the thing she suspected he hadn't said out loud in a while. My wife died 3 years ago. Car accident. T-boned by a drunk driver running a red light. She was 32. We'd been married for 8 years. No kids. Just. His voice cracked. Just her. Just us. And then just me. Rhodes. Her name was Caroline. She was an environmental lawyer. She gave a damn about things. Real things. She used to tell me I cared too much about making money, and not enough about what the money was for. He smiled, but it was the saddest thing Laurel had ever seen. She was right. After she died, I looked at my life, the company, the money, the big empty house in San Francisco, and I realized I didn't want any of it. None of it mattered without her. So you sold it. Most of it. Kept enough to live on for several lifetimes. Gave away the rest. Her family. Charities she cared about. I couldn't keep building this empire she would have hated. Couldn't keep pretending success meant anything when the only person I wanted to celebrate with was gone. Laurel sat down next to him on the steps. Their shoulders almost touched. Not quite. But almost. I was driving to nowhere when I crashed, Rhodes continued. Literally nowhere. Just picked a direction and drove until the storm hit. Fitting, really. I've been doing that for 3 years. Moving but never arriving. Breathing but not living. I know that feeling. Laurel's voice came out softer than she meant it to. After Ma died, I thought coming here would fix it. Thought isolation would help. Thought if I could just be alone long enough, I'd figure out how to be whole again. Did it work? No. She looked at him. I just got really good at being lonely. Rhodes held her gaze. Those blue eyes that had been so guarded 3 days ago were open now. Vulnerable in a way that made her chest ache. Me too, he said. Until. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Until you. Until this. Until 3 days of fixing roofs and making breakfast and learning that maybe loneliness wasn't actually what either of them needed. This is insane, Laurel said. We don't know each other. 3 days ago you were bleeding on my porch. Now I'm feeling something you swore you wouldn't feel again? Yeah. She laughed despite herself. That. Same. Rhodes shifted closer. Just an inch. Laurel, I don't have my life together. I'm still a mess. Still figuring out who I am without her. But being here, with you, fixing your cabin and drinking your terrible coffee. My coffee is not terrible. I feel like maybe I'm not just surviving anymore. Maybe I'm starting to live again. Her heart was doing something complicated. Something dangerous. The roads are going to clear, she said. Eventually. And then what? You go back to San Francisco or wherever. I stay here pretending I'm fine. Maybe. He reached over, tucked a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. Or maybe we figure it out. Together. Maybe we stop running. Rhodes. My real name is Rhodes, he interrupted. Rhodes, Ashford. I wasn't lying about that. But I was leaving out the important part. Ashford Technologies. You probably heard of it if you ever paid attention to tech news. I founded it, built it into a $5 billion company, and then walked away because none of it mattered without Caroline. 5 billion. Billion with a B. Laurel's coffee cup hovered halfway to her lips. You're a billionaire. Was. A.M. I don't know. Money doesn't feel real anymore. He watched her carefully. Does that change things? Did it? 3 weeks ago she would have said yes. Would have assumed any rich guy showing up in her life was another disaster waiting to happen. Another person who'd leave when things got hard. But Rhodes had spent 3 days fixing her cabin. Making her breakfast. Listening to her grief without trying to fix it. Looking at her like she was someone worth knowing. I don't know yet, she said honestly. Ask me again in 3 more days. He smiled. The real one. The one that made him look younger and lighter and like maybe he believed in futures again. Deal. 5 weeks after the storm, Rhodes kissed her. It wasn't planned. Wasn't some perfect movie moment with music swelling in the background. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October, leaves falling like orange and red rain, the cabin finally warm enough that they didn't need the fire going constantly. They'd fallen into a rhythm, the two of them. Rhodes would wake first, make coffee. Laurel would stumble out looking like she'd fought her pillow and lost, take her first sip, and actually become human. They'd work on the cabin. He'd fixed so much in 5 weeks that the place barely qualified as falling apart anymore. Afternoons they'd sit on the porch, talking or not talking. Evenings they'd cook dinner together, bumping into each other in her tiny kitchen in ways that felt increasingly intentional. The Rhodes had cleared 2 weeks ago. Rhodes hadn't left. Neither of them had mentioned it. "Hand me that wrench," Rhodes said from under her kitchen sink. He'd insisted the pipes were about to burst. She'd insisted he was being paranoid. Turned out he was right. Again. Laurel passed him the wrench, crouched down next to him. "You know, for a billionaire, you spend a lot of time on your back under sinks." Former billionaire. "And this is more satisfying than board meetings ever were." He torqued something, grunted with satisfaction. "There. That should hold. Your plumbing is a disaster, by the way. You're fixing it for free. I'm not complaining." He slid out from under the sink, and suddenly his face was very close to hers. Both of them crouched in the narrow space between the counter and the sink. His hair was a mess. He had a smudge of pipe grease on his jaw. His eyes were doing that thing where they looked at her like she was the only real thing in his world. "Laurel." His voice came out rough. "I should probably leave soon." Her stomach dropped. "Okay. I'm not going to though. Unless you want me to." "I don't." She stopped. Started again. "I don't know what I want. That's the problem. 5 weeks ago you were a stranger bleeding on my porch. Now you're... What am I?" Everything she swore she didn't need. Everything she'd convinced herself she could live without. Everything that scared her more than being alone forever. "You're fixing my plumbing," she said instead. "And making my coffee too strong. And looking at me like..." "Like what?" "Like I matter." Rhodes set down the wrench. Reached up and cupped her face with his hand, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "You do matter. That's what I've been trying to tell you for 5 weeks without actually saying it." "Rhodes. I'm not asking for promises. I'm not asking you to fix me or save me or be something you're not ready to be. I'm just asking..." He stopped. Swallowed. "Can I kiss you?" Her heart was trying to break out of her chest. Every rational thought in her head was screaming that this was a terrible idea. That he'd leave eventually. That everyone left. That opening herself up to this kind of hope again was the fastest way to end up shattered. But he was looking at her like she hung the moon. Like these 5 weeks mattered. Like maybe, just maybe, neither of them had to keep running. "Yes," Laurel whispered. "Yes, you can." He kissed her before she finished the sentence. It wasn't soft or tentative. It was 5 weeks of holding back, of dancing around each other, of pretending they weren't feeling exactly this. His hand slid into her hair. Her hands found his chest, fisting in his shirt. They were still crouched on the kitchen floor, surrounded by wrenches and pipe fittings and dish rags, and it was perfect. It was everything. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rhodes rested his forehead against hers. "I haven't kissed anyone since Caroline," he said quietly. 3 years. I thought I'd forgotten how. Thought I'd never want to again." "Rhodes. I'm not comparing you to her. You're nothing like her. She was fire and fury and saving the world. You're..." He pulled back enough to look at her. "You're coming home. You're the first person who's made me feel like maybe I can build something new instead of just mourning what I lost." Tears burned Laurel's eyes. "I'm scared." "Me too. What if this doesn't work? What if you wake up one day and realize you were just lonely? What if I..." Her voice cracked. "What if I let myself love you and you leave? What if I don't?" He kissed her again, softer this time. "What if we're both terrified and we do it anyway? What if we stop punishing ourselves for surviving?" She kissed him back. Let herself feel it. The hope. The want. The terrifying, exhilarating possibility that maybe she could have this. That maybe the universe hadn't taken everything from her forever. They stayed on that kitchen floor for a long time, kissing, holding each other, learning how to let someone in after years of keeping everyone out. Later, curled up on the couch with his arm around her shoulders, Laurel said, "Tell me about her." "Caroline." Rhodes tensed. "You sure?" "Yeah. She was part of your life. A huge part. I don't want you to pretend she didn't exist just because we're, whatever this is." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "She would have liked you. She would have respected the hell out of you for taking care of your mom, for walking away from nursing when it broke you. She didn't have patience for people who weren't real. You're the most real person I've met in years. Tell me something about her. Something good." She sang in the shower. Terribly. Like, cats dying in an alley terrible. But she'd belt out show tunes at 6 in the morning like she was auditioning for Broadway. He smiled, and it didn't look painful anymore. Just bittersweet. "I used to complain about it. Now I'd give anything to hear her murder, defying gravity, one more time." Laurel laced her fingers through his. "What would she tell you, if she could? Right now?" Rhodes didn't even hesitate. "She'd tell me to stop being an idiot. That she didn't die so I could spend the rest of my life in stasis. She made me promise, actually, in the hospital before." His voice caught. "Before. Made me promise I wouldn't disappear. Wouldn't let grief turn me into a ghost." "You've been keeping that promise real well," Laurel said gently. "I know. That's why I crashed my car in a storm and crawled up a mountain to a stranger's cabin. Real stable behavior. Best decision you ever made though." He looked down at her. "Yeah, it really was." They sat there as the sun set, painting the mountains in shades of purple and gold. Two broken people. Learning how to be whole. Two people who'd survived the worst and were finally, carefully, learning how to want more than just survival. "Rhodes," Laurel said into the comfortable silence. "Yeah. My coffee is not too strong." He laughed. Actually laughed. The kind that shook his whole body and made him sound young and free. "Your coffee could wake the dead, Laurel. That's called good coffee. That's called battery acid." She kissed him to shut him up. It worked. The text message came through on a cold November morning, 8 weeks after the storm. Laurel was making breakfast. She'd taken over Tuesday mornings after Rhodes had insisted her scrambled eggs were better than his, when his phone buzzed on the counter. Once. Twice. 7 times in rapid succession. Rhodes stared at it like it was a snake. "You going to check that?" Laurel flipped the eggs, trying to sound casual even though her stomach had started doing something uncomfortable. 8 weeks of isolation. 8 weeks of pretending the outside world didn't exist. Of course it couldn't last. "It's my lawyer." Rhodes picked up the phone, scrolled through the messages. His face went carefully blank. "The board at Ashford Tech is filing suit. They want me to come back. Claim I'm still majority shareholder and I abandoned my fiduciary duty when I walked away." "Can they do that?" "Legally. It's complicated. I sold my controlling shares, but I still own 20%. They think." He stopped. Set down the phone. "They think I had a breakdown after Caroline died and I'm not competent to make decisions about the company." "That's bullshit." "Is it?" He looked at her with those blue eyes that had learned how to smile again. "I did crash my car in a storm and hide in a mountain cabin for 2 months. I stopped answering calls. Stopped going to meetings. Just disappeared. From their perspective, it probably does look like a breakdown." Laurel turned off the stove, moved the eggs to plates. Sat down across from him at the small table they'd refinished together 3 weeks ago. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." He ran his hands through his hair. "Part of me wants to ignore it. Stay here. Keep fixing your cabin and drinking your terrible coffee and pretending Silicon Valley doesn't exist. But I built that company from nothing. 15 years of my life. And yeah, I walked away after Caroline died because none of it mattered without her. But maybe, he looked at her. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it can matter again. Just differently. Fear wrapped around Laurel's chest like ice. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading since that first kiss on the kitchen floor. The moment the real world came back and reminded them both that this, whatever they'd built here, was just a beautiful temporary thing. You should go, she said. Tried to mean it. Laurel. I'm serious. You can't just hide here forever. That's not. She stopped. That's not living. That's just a different kind of dying. Come with me. The words hung in the air like smoke. What? Rhodes reached across the table, took her hands. Come to San Francisco with me. We'll deal with the lawyers, figure out what I want to do with the company, and then, whatever happens, we figure it out together. You and me. Rhodes, I can't just. Why not? What's keeping you here? The question hit harder than he probably meant it to. What was keeping her here? A cabin she'd bought with death money. A life built on avoidance. A choice to hide from everything that scared her. This is my home, she said weakly. This is your hiding place. There's a difference. His grip tightened on her hands. Laurel, I love you. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. I know 8 weeks isn't enough time to really know someone. But I know you. I know how you take your coffee and how you bite your lip when you're thinking hard about something. I know you cry at sunsets when you think I'm not looking. I know you still reach for your phone to call your mom sometimes and then remember she's gone. I know you, and I love you, and I don't want to do this without you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you too. That's not the problem. Then what is? I'm scared. The words came out broken. I'm scared I'll go with you and discover you were just lonely. I'm scared I'll leave this place and realize I don't know who I am anymore. I'm scared, she sobbed. I'm scared you'll go back to your real life and realize I don't fit. That I'm just some broke ex-nurse who couldn't even keep her marriage together. And you're Rhodes Ashford. Billionaire. Genius. You have a real life waiting for you, and I'm just... Stop. He came around the table, pulled her to her feet, held her face in his hands. You think you don't fit in my life? Laurel, you are my life. These 8 weeks with you are the first time I felt real since Caroline died. You're not some broke ex-nurse. You're the woman who saved my life. Who taught me that grief doesn't have to be forever. Who makes me want to build something new instead of just mourning what I lost. But what if? No what ifs. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. We try. That's all. We try and see what happens. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe San Francisco eats us alive. Maybe you hate it and come back here and I follow you because I'm not losing you over geography. Maybe we figure it out. But we do it together. Laurel looked at this man who'd stumbled into her life bleeding and broken and somehow pieced them both back together. This man who'd learned to laugh again on her porch. This man who made coffee too weak and sang off key while he worked and looked at her like she hung every star in the sky. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll come with you. His smile could have lit up the whole mountain. Yeah. But Rhodes. She poked his chest. If this turns into some billionaire saves poor girl story, I'm going to stab you. I'm coming with you as your partner. Equal. Not some charity case you rescued. You rescued me, remember? I was the one bleeding on your porch. Don't forget it. He kissed her then, deep and long and full of promises neither of them was sure they could keep. But they were going to try. God, they were going to try. They spent the next 3 days packing up the cabin. Rhodes on the phone with lawyers, board members, people from a life he'd walked away from. Laurel sorting through 2 years of isolation, deciding what to keep and what to let go. On the last night, they sat on the porch one final time. The November air was sharp with coming winter. Stars spread across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. You think we're making a mistake? Laurel asked. Rhodes pulled her closer. Probably. But it's our mistake to make. That's not comforting. I know. He kissed the top of her head. But it's honest. Honest. That's what they'd been from the start. Brutally, painfully honest about their fear and their grief and their broken pieces. Maybe that's what would save them. Or maybe they were both about to learn that love wasn't enough. Only one way to find out. San Francisco hit Laurel like a physical force. The noise. The people. The buildings stacked on top of each other like someone had tried to fit too many lives into too little space. After 8 weeks in the mountains where the loudest sound was whined through the trees, the city felt like drowning. Rhodes's apartment, was a laugh. The place was bigger than her entire cabin. Sat in Pacific Heights with views that probably cost more per month than she'd made in a year as a nurse. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Minimalist furniture that looked like art. A kitchen that could have fed a small army. This is where you lived? Laurel stood in the middle of the massive living room, feeling tiny and out of place. Before. Caroline hated it. Rhodes set down their bags. She wanted something smaller. Cozier. Said this place felt like a museum, not a home. She was right. Everything was white or gray or chrome. Nothing lived here. It was beautiful and empty and exactly what Laurel had feared. Rhodes, I can't. She turned to him. I don't fit here. You don't have to fit. We're not staying. What? This was never home. Even before Caroline died, this was just where I kept my stuff. We'll stay here while I deal with the board, and then we'll find something else. Something that's ours. Okay. She wanted to believe him. But standing in this palace in the sky, she could feel the distance between who he'd been and who she was. Rhodes Ashford, tech billionaire. Laurel Baptiste, broke ex-nurse who'd spent 2 years hiding in the mountains. Okay, she said. But it didn't feel okay. The board meeting was 3 days later. Rhodes had been on the phone constantly. Lawyers, advisors, people whose names Laurel couldn't keep straight. She'd spent the time wandering the city, trying to find her footing in this place that felt like a different planet. You don't have to come, Rhodes said the morning of the meeting, adjusting his tie. He'd traded flannel and jeans for a suit that probably cost 5 figures. He looked like a stranger. This is going to be ugly. I'm coming. Laurel smoothed down her dress, the nicest thing she owned, bought for her mother's funeral. You said we're partners. Partners show up. His face softened. I love you. I love you too. Now let's go watch you terrify some board members. The Ashford Technologies office occupied 3 floors of a building downtown. Glass and steel and people who moved like they owned the world. Rhodes walked in, and every head turned. Whispers followed them like waves. Is that him? I heard he had a breakdown. Who's the woman? Laurel lifted her chin and kept walking. She'd survived her mother's death and her divorce and 2 years alone in the mountains. She could survive some corporate gossip. The boardroom was all windows and expensive chairs and 12 people who looked at Rhodes like he was a problem to be solved. Rhodes. The man at the head of the table, silver hair, perfect suit, smile that didn't reach his eyes, stood up. Thank you for coming. We were beginning to think you'd forgotten about us entirely. Marcus. Rhodes didn't shake his hand. I got your lawsuit. Creative approach to a shareholder meeting. We were concerned. You disappeared. Stopped answering calls. We had responsibilities to the company, to the shareholders. I own 20%. I'm aware of my responsibilities. Rhodes pulled out a chair. Gestured for Laurel to sit. She did, very aware of 12 pairs of eyes assessing her. This is Laurel Baptiste. She's with me. Anything you say to me, you say in front of her. Marcus's smile went even colder. Of course. Though this is company business. And she's my partner. So unless you want to explain to a judge why you're excluding her from a meeting you forced me to attend, I suggest we move on. Point to Rhodes. The meeting was 2 hours of corporate warfare. The board wanted Rhodes to come back fully. Resume his position as Chief Innovation Officer. Be the face of the company again. They didn't say it outright, but Laurel heard the subtext. They wanted the Rhodes Ashford who'd built a $5 billion empire, not the broken man who'd walked away. Rhodes listened, asked questions, was polite and professional and absolutely unmovable. "I'm not coming back," he said finally. "Not the way you want. I'll serve as an advisory board member. I'll consult on major technical decisions. But I'm done living for this company. I have other priorities now." "Your wife wouldn't have wanted," Marcus started. "Don't." Rhodes's voice went deadly quiet. "Don't you dare tell me what Caroline would have wanted. You met her twice. She thought you were a soulless corporate shark, and she was right. So whatever you're about to say, swallow it." Silence. Then Laurel did something she probably shouldn't have. She spoke up. "Can I say something?" 12 faces turned to her. Rhodes looked surprised but didn't stop her. "I'm just a nurse from North Carolina. I don't know anything about tech or billion-dollar companies or how all this works. But I know what it looks like when someone's been dead inside and finally starts living again. And Rhodes." She looked at him. "He's been dead for 3 years. You all knew him before. You saw what losing his wife did to him. And you're sitting here trying to guilt him into coming back, into sacrificing what he's finally found, because it's convenient for you. Because you need him." "Ms. Baptiste," Marcus tried to interrupt. "I'm not done. Rhodes built this company. He gets to decide what relationship he has with it now. And if you try to force him through a lawsuit or manipulation or whatever corporate game you're playing, all you're going to do is destroy whatever goodwill he has left. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop the lawsuit. Rhodes will consult, advise, help when you need him. But on his terms. And if that's not good enough," she stood up, "then you'll have to build your own billion-dollar company. Without him." She walked out. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought she might pass out. She'd just told off a boardroom full of billionaires and executives. She'd probably made everything worse. Rhodes would have to clean up her mess, smooth things over, apologize for. The door opened behind her. Rhodes came out, a smile splitting his face. "That," he said, "was the hottest thing I've ever seen. Did I just ruin everything? You just saved everything." He kissed her, right there in the corporate hallway with its expensive art and its judging eyes. "They're dropping the suit. I'll consult. Everyone's pretending they're not furious that they got called out by a nurse from North Carolina. It's perfect. I probably shouldn't have. You absolutely should have. Laurel, you walked into a boardroom full of sharks and told them the truth. Do you know how rare that is in this world? Maybe she did fit here after all. Just not in the way anyone expected." The first real fight happened 3 weeks later. They'd fallen into a rhythm in San Francisco, but it wasn't the easy rhythm they'd had in the cabin. Rhodes spent his days in meetings, consulting for Ashford Tech, talking to lawyers, dealing with the endless demands of being Rhodes Ashford even in a reduced capacity. Laurel spent her days waiting. She'd tried to find her footing. Applied to a few nursing positions, but every interview ended the same way. 2 years out of practice. Gap in her resume. And the question that always came, "Why did you leave?" "Because I watched my mother die and it broke me. Because my husband left me when I needed him most. Because I ran away to the mountains and hid for 2 years. None of those were good answers in a sterile hospital interview room. So she wandered. Walked the city. Felt increasingly like a ghost in Rhodes's life. The night it all came crashing down, Rhodes came home at 9 p.m. Again. The 3rd time that week. "Hey." He kissed her forehead, loosened his tie. "Sorry I'm late." Marcus called an emergency meeting about the new AI integration. It ran long. It's fine. Laurel didn't look up from her book. Hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. You okay? I said it's fine. Rhodes stopped. Looked at her. Really looked. Laurel. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She closed the book, stood up. I've been here 3 weeks, Rhodes. 3 weeks of living in your apartment that Caroline hated, in your city, waiting for you to come home from your meetings. I don't have a job. I don't have friends. I don't have anything except you, and lately I barely have that. That's not fair. You know I have to. I know. You have to consult. You have to fix things. You have to be Rhodes Ashford, tech genius. I get it. But where does that leave me? Her voice cracked. I'm just the woman you found in the mountains. The project you rescued. The distraction from your grief. Don't. Rhodes's voice went hard. Don't reduce what we have to that. You're not a project. You're not a distraction. You're... What am I, Rhodes? Your girlfriend? Your partner? The woman who lives in your dead wife's apartment and has no life of her own. Tears spilled down her face. I gave up my cabin, my home, my space, to follow you here. And I'm drowning. Then why didn't you say something? Because you have so much on your plate. Because I'm supposed to be strong and supportive and understanding. Because I thought I could handle it. She wiped her eyes angrily. But I can't. I can't keep pretending I'm fine when I feel like I'm disappearing. Rhodes ran his hands through his hair. What do you want me to do? Quit consulting? Walk away from the company completely? I'm trying to find balance, Laurel. I'm trying to figure out how to be in this world without losing myself. Without losing us. Maybe there is no us in this world. The words came out quiet. Devastating. Maybe we only worked in the mountains. Away from reality. You don't mean that. Don't I? She looked at him. Be honest. When you're in those meetings, dealing with Marcus and the board and all of it, do you think about me? Or do you slip back into being the old Rhodes? The one who lived for the company? He didn't answer fast enough. That silence said everything. That's what I thought. Laurel grabbed her jacket. I need air. Laurel, wait. But she was already out the door. She walked for hours. Through streets she didn't know, past restaurants and bars full of people who belonged here. The fog rolled in off the bay, cold and damp, and she let it swallow her. Her phone buzzed. Rhodes calling. She let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again. A text. Please come home. We need to talk about this. Home. This wasn't home. The cabin was home. The mountains were home. Here she was just existing. She found herself on a bench overlooking the water. The Golden Gate Bridge glowed orange in the distance. It was beautiful. It was empty. It was everything she'd been afraid of. Thought I'd find you here. Laurel jumped. Rhodes stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking exhausted. How did you? I've been walking for 2 hours looking for you. This is the 4th waterfront spot I've checked. He sat down next to her, careful to leave space between them. You scared me. I just needed to think. I know. But Laurel. He turned to face her. You were right. In the apartment. About all of it. Rhodes. No, let me finish. You were right that I've been slipping back into old patterns. That I've been so focused on managing the board and the company that I haven't been present with you. That I've been expecting you to just fit into my life without helping you build a life of your own. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said you rescued me. That wasn't fair. Wasn't it? He smiled sadly. You saved my life that night, literally. But I think maybe I was hoping you'd save the rest of me too. That loving you would fix everything. That's not fair to you. You're not responsible for my healing. And you're not responsible for mine. Laurel wiped her eyes. I think I was hoping the same thing. That loving you would make everything okay. That I could just step into your life and become someone new. But I can't. I'm still Laurel Baptiste, ex-nurse, daughter of a dead woman, divorcee who hid in the mountains. I don't know how to be her in San Francisco. Then maybe we figure it out together. Really together. Rhodes moved closer. I'll cut back on consulting. 1 day a week, that's it. We'll find you something, not nursing if that's not what you want anymore, but something that's yours. And we'll find our own place. Not this museum Caroline hated. Something that's Rhodes, no. You're not just throwing money at my job. I'm not throwing money. I'm investing. In healthcare. For people who need it. He grabbed his phone, started making nows from the start. You'd do that. Laurel, I love you. But love isn't enough if we're not actually building a life together. If we're not partners in practice, not just in theory. He took her hand. I don't want the old Rhodes. I don't want to live for the company. But I also don't want to be the guy hiding in the mountains forever. I want to figure out who I am now. With you. Not instead of you. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm scared we can't make this work. I know. Me too. He kissed the top of her head. But I'd rather try and fail with you than succeed at anything else. They sat there as the fog rolled in thicker, turning the city into ghosts and shadows. Two people who'd found each other in a storm, learning that the real storm was figuring out how to love each other in the daylight. Rhodes. Laurel said finally. Yeah. I don't want to give up on us. Good. Because neither do I. It wasn't a perfect ending to the fight. They still had to walk back to the apartment. Still had to figure out the logistics of building a life together. Still had to face the reality that love was work and compromise and showing up even when it was hard. But it was a start. Rhodes kept his promise. 1 day a week at Ashford Tech. Tuesdays. He'd go in, do the consulting, handle whatever crisis Marcus had manufactured, and come home by 6. The rest of the week was theirs. The apartment hunt took 2 weeks. They looked at places in Pacific Heights that were just smaller versions of the museum Rhodes already owned. Places in the Mission that Laurel loved but Rhodes said had parking issues. Places in North Beach that were perfect but already rented. Then they found it. A converted firehouse in Russian Hill. Exposed brick. High ceilings. A kitchen that was actually meant for cooking, not just displaying. Big windows that let in real light. And a rooftop deck that looked out over the city but somehow still felt private. It needs work, the realtor said apologetically. The previous owner started renovations but never finished. You'd basically be buying a construction project. Rhodes looked at Laurel. Laurel looked at Rhodes. They both smiled. We'll take it, they said together. Turns out, renovating a San Francisco firehouse was exactly like renovating a falling-apart cabin in the North Carolina mountains. Just with permits and inspectors and contractors who charged 5 times as much. Rhodes was in his element. He'd shed the suits for jeans and flannel. Spent his days learning building codes and arguing with contractors and figuring out load-bearing walls. He looked happier than Laurel had seen him since the cabin. You know you could just hire people to do all this, Laurel said, watching him tear out old drywall with more enthusiasm than any billionaire should have for manual labor. Where's the fun in that? He was covered in dust, grinning like a kid. Besides, my dad would haunt me if I paid someone to do something I can do myself. Your dad, the carpenter. My dad, the carpenter. Something sad flickered across his face. He died when I was 22. Heart attack. I was in my first year building Ashford Tech, working 80-hour weeks, convinced I was going to change the world. Barely called him. Barely visited. And then he was just gone. Laurel set down the paint samples she'd been reviewing. Rhodes. Caroline used to say that's why I worked so hard. That I was trying to prove something to a dead man. She was probably right. He pulled off his work gloves. But you know what? I think he'd like this. Seeing me actually build something with my hands again. Something real. A $6 million firehouse is pretty real. You know what I mean. He crossed to her, pulled her close despite the dust. Something that matters. With you. She kissed him. Tasted dust and sweat and hope. Laurel's job came from an unexpected place. She was at a coffee shop in their new neighborhood, that felt good to think, when she overheard two women talking about a community health clinic that was struggling. Underfunded. Understaffed. Serving mostly uninsured immigrants and homeless folks in the Tenderloin. She walked in the next day. The clinic was held together with duct tape and determination. Flickering lights. Chairs with duct-taped vinyl. A waiting room packed with people who looked like they'd been waiting hours. Can I help you? The woman at the desk looked exhausted. Name tag said Maria. Couldn't have been older than 25, but had the eyes of someone much older. I'm a nurse, Laurel said. I heard you might need help. Maria actually laughed. Lady, we need everything. Help, money, staff, miracles. You offering miracles. Just nursing. I have my RN license. It's been 2 years since I practiced, but I'm good. I'm really good. And She stopped. I need this. To feel useful again. To remember why I became a nurse in the first place. Maria studied her. You're serious. Completely. We can't pay much. Barely anything. And the patients, they're not easy. Language barriers, trauma, people who've been failed by the system so many times they don't trust anyone in scrubs. I speak Spanish, Laurel said. Not fluently, but enough. And I'm from North Carolina. I grew up poor. I know what it's like to need help and not be able to afford it. When can you start? Now. Maria's exhausted face broke into a real smile. Then grab some gloves. We've got 30 people waiting. Laurel came home that night at 8 p.m., completely drained and more alive than she'd felt in months. Rhodes was in the firehouse kitchen, their firehouse kitchen now, even though they were still living in boxes, stirring something that smelled amazing. Hey. He kissed her. Wait, what happened? I got a job. The words burst out of her. At a community clinic in the Tenderloin. It's underfunded and chaotic and half the equipment doesn't work properly and I saw 12 patients today and I didn't get paid anything in Rhodes. I loved it. I loved every exhausting minute of it. His smile lit up his whole face. Tell me everything. So she did. Over the dinner he'd made, he'd been experimenting with cooking. Turns out billionaires had time to learn things when they weren't working 80-hour weeks. She told him about Maria and the clinic and the patients. The woman with diabetes who hadn't seen a doctor in 3 years. The kid with an ear infection his mom couldn't afford to treat. The elderly man who just needed someone to check his blood pressure and listen to him talk about his dead wife. They need so much, Laurel said. The clinic, Better equipment. More staff. Supplies. Everything. Rhodes set down his fork. Got that look on his face. The one that meant his brain was moving at light speed. How much would it cost? To get them what they need. Oats. What if, okay, hear me out. What if this becomes my thing? Not tech anymore. Healthcare access. Community clinics. I've got the money just sitting there. Caroline always said I should use it for something that mattered. This matters. Rhodes. The clinic in the Tenderloin is the pilot program. We get them fully funded, properly staffed, everything they need. See what works. Then we replicate it. San Francisco has dozens of underserved neighborhoods. And that's just one city. Laurel, we could actually help people. She stared at him. This man who'd crashed his car in a storm and crawled up a mountain bleeding. This man who'd been so lost in grief he couldn't see a future. This man who was suddenly on fire with purpose for the first time since his wife died. We, she said softly. We. He took her hands. You know the medical side. I know operations and funding and how to build systems. Together we could change everything. Or at least try. Laurel felt tears on her face. Happy tears. The kind she'd forgotten existed. Your dad would be proud. And Caroline, Rhodes, she'd love this. Yeah. His voice went thick. Yeah, she would. They stood in their under-construction kitchen in their firehouse that still needed months of work, and for the first time since leaving the cabin, Laurel felt like they weren't just surviving anymore. They were building something real. Christmas came to the firehouse. It was their first holiday together. Really together, not just surviving a storm or figuring out if they could make it work. The renovations were mostly done. They had furniture now. Real furniture they'd picked out together, not the museum pieces from Rhodes's old life. Laurel hung lights on the exposed brick. Rhodes insisted on a real tree, even though it cost a fortune and dropped needles everywhere. They were learning each other's traditions. Her ma's sweet potato pie recipe. His dad's habit of playing Bing Crosby on repeat until everyone wanted to commit murder. The clinic had thrown a party the week before. Nothing fancy, just pizza and donated gifts for the kids who came through. Rhodes had shown up in jeans and a Santa hat, writing checks that made Maria cry and playing with children who didn't know he was a billionaire. Just knew he was the tall guy who fixed the broken heater and made sure they had toys. Laurel had watched him crouch down to a 5-year-old's level, listening seriously as the kid explained his theory about how reindeer could fly, and something in her chest had cracked open. This was the man she'd found bleeding on her porch. This was the man who'd been dead inside for 3 years. And now he was alive again, laughing with children, building something that mattered. She loved him so much it scared her. Christmas Eve, they sat on their rooftop deck wrapped in blankets, watching the city lights twinkle like earthbound stars. Rhodes had made hot chocolate, the real kind, melted chocolate and milk, none of that packet nonsense. I have something for you, he said. Rhodes, we said no big gifts. The firehouse was the gift. This isn't big. Well, he stopped. Smiled. Actually, it might be. Depends on your answer. Her heart started doing something complicated. He pulled out a small box. Velvet. The kind that could only mean one thing. Rhodes. Let me say this before I lose my nerve. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple. Beautiful. A sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. This was my grandmother's. My dad's mom. She wore it for 62 years. When my dad died, he left it to me. Said to give it to someone who mattered. I gave it to Caroline. Laurel's breath caught. Rhodes, I can't. She gave it back to me. 2 days before she died. We were in the hospital, and she knew she wasn't making it. She took it off and put it in my hand and said, "You're going to love someone else someday. And when you do, give them this. Tell them I said to take care of you." His voice cracked. So I'm telling you. Caroline said to take care of me. Tears streamed down Laurel's face. That's not fair. I know. But it's true. He took her hand. Laurel Baptiste, you saved my life. Literally that night in the storm, and every day since. You taught me that grief doesn't have to be forever. That I can honor what I lost and still build something new. That love isn't about replacing what's gone, it's about being brave enough to try again. Rhodes. I'm not asking you to be Caroline. I'm not asking you to fix me or complete me or any of that romantic nonsense. I'm asking you to be my partner. To build this crazy life with me. To keep calling me out when I work too much and make terrible coffee. To drag me to community clinics and show me what actually matters. He smiled through his own tears. Marry me, please. Let's stop being scared and just be together. Officially. Laurel looked at the ring. At this man. At the life they'd built from broken pieces. Ask me properly, she said. What? You're doing this whole speech, but you haven't actually asked the question. Rhodes laughed. Actually laughed. Then he slid off the bench and got down on one knee on their rooftop deck overlooking San Francisco. Laurel, Baptiste. Will you marry me? Yes. The word came out choked with tears and joy. Yes, you ridiculous man. Yes. He slid the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. Like it had been waiting for her all along. They kissed on that rooftop as fireworks started going off somewhere in the city. Not for them, just random early celebrations, but it felt like the universe was paying attention anyway. When they finally broke apart, Laurel looked at the ring. Tell me about your grandmother. Nana Rose. She was tiny and fierce and didn't take crap from anyone. Kept my grandpa in line for 6 decades. She died when I was 15. Rhodes sat back down, pulled Laurel into his lap. She would have loved you. Probably would have told you to boss me around more. I boss you around plenty. Not nearly enough. He kissed her temple. We should call people. Tell them. Who are you going to call? Marcus. She was joking, but Rhodes got thoughtful. Actually, my sister. I should call my sister. Laurel sat up. You have a sister? Half-sister. Elena. She lives in Seattle. We don't talk much, my fault, not hers. After Caroline died, I kind of cut everyone off. But she's been texting lately. Checking in. I've been ignoring her. He pulled out his phone. I should tell her I'm getting married. That I'm not a ghost anymore. And I should call. Laurel stopped. Who was she going to call? Her mother was dead. Her father had been gone since she was 6. Her ex-husband had moved on. She had colleagues at the clinic, but they weren't family. Rhodes saw it on her face. Hey, you have me now. And my annoying sister who's going to want to plan the whole wedding. And Maria from the clinic who will probably cry. And we'll build our family. Together. However that looks. I like Maria. Maria's great. She can be your best woman or whatever. That's not a thing. We'll make it a thing. It's our wedding. He kissed her. We can do whatever we want. They stayed on that rooftop for hours. Calling Elena, who screamed so loud they had to hold the phone away from their ears. Texting Maria, who sent back 17 exclamation points and 4 crying emojis. Planning a wedding that would probably be small and weird and perfect. And for the first time since her mother died, since Jonathan left, since she'd run to the mountains to hide from her life, Laurel felt like she had a future. A real one. Not just surviving but actually living. Rhodes? She said as they finally headed back inside, the December cold seeping through their blankets. Yeah. Thank you. For crawling up that mountain. For bleeding on my porch. For being stubborn enough to stay. He squeezed her hand. Thank you for opening the door.